Hello, my sweeties, and as you may or may not know, Pride Month is here, and today I want to talk about the stigmas within the LGBTQ plus community. Are you also tired of seeing more of this?
You can't be American and wear that mask. You cannot. We literally had a war about this.
You ain't gonna win! My wrist. Down the street, the cops are gonna have his name. Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot!
You don't need a mask.
Relax.
Man, I can't breathe my face. Just get up.
As I watched the video and listened to the officer's commands, it is my belief that the officer had the intention to deploy their taser, but instead shot Mr. Wright.
No peace! No justice! No...
Hold the fist, man. Throw it! Throw it!
And less of this. Let's talk. Bam badam bam 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 badam bam 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 cafe. Bam ba 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 cafe. Dun 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 cafe. First, let me start with my own story, which explains the title of this video. About 3 years ago, I had joined a bunch of the LGBTQ plus community groups on Facebook, just to connect to that side, since I never really connected to that side of my sexuality. One, just because my family was very supportive of me when I came out and really didn't change anything, didn't add any stigmatizations or anything. But as I got older, I started realizing that my sexuality did make a huge difference when it came to me, from dating to people who would want to interact with me and would not want to interact with me. And so I decided to join a couple of groups, since I didn't really find anything within my own community for adults among the LGBTQ plus community. And so I turned to social media. Now, in one of these groups, one day I had seen a lesbian, at least she claimed to have been lesbian, posted something about, us bisexual girls, basically being disgusting because we've had dicks on us and we've had sex with the opposite gender, and that just basically, to her, dicks equaled STIs, which, FYI, that's not exactly how STIs work. And at first I didn't think anything of it. I just kind of was just like, okay, this person is a little out there. So I just reported and moved on with my day. However, this was not the end of the story. In fact, a whole group of these lesbians, and that's what they call themselves. I am not going to judge all lesbians off of this group. Basically started attacking not only bisexuals and transgenders, but also even their own fellow lesbians who ever had sex with a man. Which, I'm sorry, anyone who's explored their own sexuality knows that most of the time, even if later you realize that you're of a different sexuality, you usually follow the norm of a society, which of course is heterosexual. So there are lots of lesbians out there who have shared their own stories about the fact that they were in relationships with men and never really were happy until they realized that, oh, I'm a lesbian, and ended up getting into that type of sexuality. And so that's just something that is very common. But apparently to this group of lesbians, that was unacceptable, and they started becoming extremely abusive and defensive whenever they were confronted. And basically, there was even one I remember that said that if you are bi and you date me, you have to be lesbian, which, I'm sorry, I'm not changing my sexuality just to please the person I am dating. So it got really bad, and unfortunately, the admins of the group actually sided with this group of lesbians. And in fact, they even encouraged and added to the behavior, which obviously eventually I ended up leaving the group, and that should have been the end of the story. Unfortunately, it was not. And the next thing I know, even after not only having reported and left the group for blasting hateful comments, they started harassing not only my Facebook, which I don't really keep my Facebook private most of the time. There have been times I've thought about it. This was one of those times. But not only did they start attacking my Facebook, but they also found my Twitter account, which at that time I had just gotten Twitter. I was still getting used to Twitter. I was still experimenting with Twitter, and they started attacking me on my Twitter. And of course, in response, I had not only posted on my Facebook, but I had also posted on my Twitter account that, fine, I'm a bisexual lesbian and I'm just going to embrace this. And, here's the original post if you guys are interested. And I will leave this video under that post, so if anyone is interested to know the story behind it, there you go. Here's the story behind what that post is about. Because I'm not sure if I'm quite ready to even delete it at this point, and I think this is something that just needs to be talked about. And there's always going to be people who, when you're just starting to figure out your sexuality, when you're still trying to figure out all these labels. I mean, when I was a freshman in high school, really the only labels there was is if you were gay, straight, or bi. And since I'm attracted to both sexes, I was bi. However, now here towards the senior year of my college years, there's so many labels I can't even keep up. And I know today I am only going to be touching a very brief, not even probably 1% of the community when it comes to these stigmas. And so if you have a story you would like to share, please comment down below and keep the conversation going, because this is stuff that needs to be talked about. The biggest question is stigmas like the one I went through a big thing in the LGBTQ plus community? And unfortunately, the answer is yes. And I apologize. It is Memorial Day weekend. It is the first week of June. I live off the highway. There's going to be traffic everywhere, so I apologize. There's nothing I can do about it. So, lesbians versus gays. Lesbians and gays have always kept a distance from each other. There was a brief break in the 80s when AIDS had risen, but unfortunately this did not stay. And as Michael Mestro reflected in his article, Why Don't Gays and Lesbians Get Along, he stated, quote, "The LGBT sphere has increasingly become a string of villages that rarely connect, even on the battlefield. Gay men and lesbians in particular often seem to be at opposite ends of a disheartening divide, hardly joined in deep-seated LGBT-ness. At queer nightclubs, the idea of a mixed crowd died long ago, and in fact, not only do gays and lesbians have separate hangouts, but those places are for niches within the groups. And if you want to try adding a woman into a gay bar mix, you're most likely going to hear yelps of fish as the guys lose their hard-ons and frantically duck behind the DJ booth for cover." Which I have read about this very similar thing. I don't know if I've experienced it too much. I usually get along with gay guys, and most of the experience I have had is either among the gay men, bisexuals, or transgenders. I haven't had too many run-ins with fellow lesbians in everyday life beyond a couple older lesbians that, obviously are way past the dating and, just want to settle down and enjoy their last years. Part of the stigmatization comes from the heterosexual side. In Michael's article, he basically puts it that gay men are like heterosexual men, and often more than none, being led by the genitals, where lesbian women, kind of like feminists, are often reminded of their lack of place within a male-dominated community. And Northrop, a lesbian activist, even stated heterosexual men and women like each other even less than gay men and women. And gay men and lesbians lack the sexual imperative, so they can separate more easily and come together with less tension. So there are pros and cons. The cons is the fact that they cannot relate to a point that they'll hang out with each other. However, due to the fact that there's any lack of sexual tension when it comes to rising up and standing up for each other, they're a lot stronger. So that's kind of an interesting way of looking at things. And now, of course, fellow bisexuals like myself. I cannot not count how many times I have heard of the bisexuals cannot be loyal because they are attracted to both sexes. We are always up for threesomes. This is honestly one of the biggest things I experienced. I thought once I got out of high school, I would stop experiencing that because I thought threesomes was just a big thing in my high school and everyone wanted to try it once, which I have tried it. I don't like it. But it's even led to my adulthood. Here I am, I'm almost 30, and I still experience because you're bisexual, you are always up for threesomes, and I have had people that want to date me specifically because of that stereotype, which, is the reason I have been single for so long. According to heterosexuals, we are not straight enough, and on the other side of the coin, according to the gays and lesbians, we are not gay enough. So one of the biggest things is bisexual are often accused of being gay in denial, while most bisexual women are accused of being heterosexual in disguise. And, of course, sleeping with the enemy. Zana Vagola, and I really hope I pronounced that name right, stated in her article, a new study explains why many lesbians are biased against bisexual women, is that, quote, lesbian women and communities are notorious for rejecting bisexual women as potential friends and as sexual and romantic partners due to stereotypes that bisexual women are untrustworthy, unreliable, incapable of monogamy, disease carriers, and sleeping with the enemy. Bisexual men are also stigmatized by gay men to some extent, but giving gay men lesser cultural emphasis on monogamy and greater interest in casual sex, bisexual men's desirability is less affected by these stereotypes and may even be bolstered by gay men's preference for masculinity, which is perceived as higher among bisexual guys. And of course, from the research that Zana found, is that lesbians are more accepting of gay men than bisexual women, shown in this graph. So, gays, there's good news. Lesbians hate bisexual women more than they hate you, apparently. Quote, lesbian women view bisexual women as being more sexually attracted to men than to women, which in turn makes them dislike bisexual women. Gay men, on the other hand, have fewer reasons to dislike bisexual men, since bisexual men's orientation is perceived to lean in a same gender direction. Which, now I can explain to you why I literally stated, fine, I am a bisexual lesbian, in reprieve to those lesbians that were attacking me, because I am more attracted to women most of the time. I am more attracted to maybe a more feminine male or a man that is a lot more emotional than most heterosexual white men in America usually are. So, really, I would be more inclined to what my society would claim to be more of a feminine male, and possibly what my society would consider more of a masculine female. Even though personally I kind of lean towards gender neutral, really. But for me, I was raised that love doesn't have a gender or a color. So when I find that someone, it's not going to be of a specific color or gender. It's just that's going to be who I zing with, so to speak. Transgenders, of course, are also another community within the LGBTQ plus community who deal with notorious stereotypes on both sides of the spectrum. Transgenders experience huge stigmas in the heterosexual community, but are also more than none not welcomed within the LGBTQ plus community either, despite the fact that they were the reason we even have Pride Month to begin with. Stonewall happened in 1969. Logan Graves, in his article, A Look at Transphobia Within the LGBTQ Community, pointed out that, quote, hardly anyone knew or identified with the term transgender. However, individuals who would come to identify as trans were already given their types as their authentic selves, such as Christina Jorgensen, who became famous in the 1950s for her reassignment surgery. Gay liberation activists such as Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera refer to themselves as gay, among a variety of other terms indicating a fluency and lack of focus on labels. And instead, we're blurred the complete opposite of today, which honestly, I kind of miss that. I wish we were a little bit more open into not concentrating on the labels so much. I've experienced this whenever I date people, especially in the LGBTQ plus community, that they want to know every single bit of my label. Not only am I bisexual, but am I bisexual and asexual? Do I lean more towards this way? Do I lean more towards this way? Like, literally, they want, like, an entire, like, page of just my labels so they know exactly what I am, and they know to move on or stay with me. And honestly, that's not going to help in finding someone happily ever after. And really, there are times I just want to throw labels out the door. Activists Riva and Johnson even stated that they didn't feel welcome within the gay uprising that they themselves started. In 1973, Riva even found herself scorned, booed, and hissed at when she attempted to speak at a liberation march that year because the lesbian women at the time did not want to allow a drag queen to speak, and this is something that still goes on to this day. Transgender activist and Stonewall veteran Miss Major Griffin Gracie, I think is how you pronounce that, on the topic of transgenders and people of color, stated in her interview with Jessica Stern, quote, I feel like we've been pushed to the outside and then prevented from looking in. It's the stairs, the non-inclusion, over decision-making, exclusion from events that would build this movement. I think if they could eradicate us, they would. And this is something transgenders get on both sides. And that is just, it's not good, it's not welcomed, and it needs to stop. So, after what happened in the Facebook group, a couple of months later, after I had left, reported, and then dealt with all the shit of being attacked on my Facebook and Twitter, a group of gays reached out to us, specifically a couple, who I even talk to this day. They're a very sweet couple, and I really appreciate them, and I kind of feel bad that we haven't talked as much as we used to. We used to talk like every day. They just made sure that we were okay, and I was okay, but at that time, and even to recent times, I don't look forward to going to Pride as much as I used to. I mean, I was ecstatic when I got my flags in, and, you know, I figured out a way to display them in my room, and this year, with everything going on, obviously we're not going to have a gay pride march in my area, but I was kind of looking forward to the fact I do graduate this month and being able to take my flags with me and just be proud and be out. But at the same time, I also don't feel like my sexuality defines me as a person and should be the reason why I am treated a certain way and approached a certain way, and why certain people want to date me and why other people don't want to date me. So, in my final thoughts, this is what I have to say. The LGBTQ plus community is supposed to be a community for all to come and to not only find their own, but to also find support in a family where many have lost theirs. However, more often than none, we find ourselves on a battlefield. I find more of a community and a family within my K-pop group fandom when it comes to my sexuality than I ever have amongst any of the LGBTQ plus community I have ever been a part of, whether that is on social media or off social media. At the end of the day, we are all fighting the same battle, but we will never, ever win if our troops keep fighting amongst each other and not actually fighting the true enemy. And those are my thoughts for this coming up Pride Month, especially since there's going to be a good bunch of us that are not going to be able to actually go to an actual celebration this year, and we'll have to do our celebrations online or any other type of forms. And when we do those celebrations, we shouldn't be met with the same stigmatizations that those outside of the LGBTQ plus community have placed on us. So those are my final thoughts. Enjoy your Pride this month and take care. If you guys would like to join in the conversation, please comment below. Or if you have any ideas for future topics, you can always DM me on all of my social media accounts. Or send me an email at Wyona.am@gmail.com. And my Tumblr blog, WyM3 blog. You can also check out all of my other YouTube videos, my music and books channel, Wyona A.M, and my WyM3 vlog, which is basically my home base and my vlog channel. And of course, if you haven't, also like and subscribe this channel, my Coffee with WyWy channel, where we will have more and more discussions like this one.